It was a crisp and gentle morning when Clara Renford, a travel writer known for her poetic descriptions of hidden gems, opened her journal beside a steaming cup of rose tea. The sun was still timid, casting a silvery veil over the coastal town of Windermere Bay, a quiet fishing village tucked into the northeastern corner of Maine. Clara had arrived the night before, lulled to sleep by the rhythm of waves against the shore and the distant call of seabirds. She sat alone at a counter in a cafe called the Driftwood Table, a warmly lit breakfast spot known for its artisan pastries and postcard views of the harbor. The morning crowd bustled gently around her, fishermen with rough hands ordering coffee strong enough to wake the dead, couples sharing smiles over eggs and toast, and waitstaff gliding between booths like seagulls riding the air. Clara's eyes drifted from the glossy menu to the bay window, where she could just make out the silhouette of a lighthouse through the mist. She had a special affection for lighthouses, not just for their stoic beauty, but for what they represented: guardians of the coast, keepers of secrets, and symbols of resilience. Her next book was a collection titled Lanterns of the Lost Coast, and each chapter chronicled her personal visits to historic lighthouses across the East Coast. Today, she would explore the Breakwater Beacon, a humble structure at the end of a nearly mile-long granite pathway that jutted into the sea like a stone sword. But that was still to come. For now, Clara ordered the house special, cinnamon brioche French toast stacked high and crowned with blueberries, whipped cream, and a drizzle of maple syrup as golden as dawn. She smiled as the plate arrived, a decadent feast for a day she intended to remember. Her thoughts drifted. This town had a calming effect, unlike the manic pace of city life. The owner of the inn where she was staying, a sprightly older woman named Martha Bell, had given her a hand-drawn map of Windermere Bay, with a heart doodled around a lighthouse and an enthusiastic, "You must see this," written beside it. Clara chuckled to herself and looked again out the window. The fog was lifting slowly, revealing the jagged outline of boats swaying gently at their moorings. Clara jotted down a few notes in her weathered notebook. Fog has personality here, like an old ghost reluctant to leave. Breakwater Beacon, not the tallest or the oldest, but the walk, oh, the walk will be the story. She sipped her tea, letting the warmth fill her chest, and watched as a seagull strutted along the sidewalk, pausing to squawk at a cyclist who zipped by. Across the street, buildings painted in cheerful pastels leaned toward each other as if sharing secrets from centuries ago. Her breakfast was nearly finished when a young girl approached her, no more than 10, with wind-tangled curls and eyes bright with curiosity. "Are you the lady who writes about old places?" the girl asked. Clara smiled. "I suppose I am. Why do you ask?" "My granddad says there's a tunnel under the Breakwater Beacon," the girl said, lowering her voice like it was a conspiracy. "He says pirates built it?" Clara leaned closer, intrigued. "Does he now? And has he seen this tunnel?" The girl shook her head. "Says it only shows itself when the tide's just right. And when the fog's really thick. He calls it the sea's secret mouth." Clara chuckled, delighted. "That's quite the name. Thank you for the tip, miss." Junie, the girl beamed before skipping back to her table where her grandfather, a man with a sea-weathered face and a storyteller's grin, gave Clara a nod. Clara finished the last bite of her toast, folded her journal closed, and settled the bill. Outside, the fog had thinned into ribbons, trailing between the rooftops. The sun was now peeking through in earnest, its golden light catching on the sea like glitter. She walked to her rental car and took a deep breath. The scent of salt water, pine, and pastry mixed into something undeniably magical. She knew this day would hold more than just scenic beauty. Perhaps the whispers of legend still lingered at the beacon. Perhaps, if the tide was right, the sea's secret mouth might even speak to her. As she drove slowly toward the coast, passing lawn after lawn sloping gently into the harbor, Clara felt an old familiar flutter in her chest, the thrill of discovery, the promise of untold stories, and the wonder of not knowing what came next. The narrow road that hugged the shoreline seemed almost untouched by time. Clara rolled down her window to let the sea breeze in as she guided the car slowly past a string of picturesque houses. Each home had its own character: weathered shingles, brightly painted shutters, and porches decorated with wind chimes and faded lobster buoys. She could imagine generations of sea-loving families living here, passing down tales of storms, shipwrecks, and starlit horizons. She followed Martha's map, which had a small lighthouse icon sketched on the bottom corner beside a hand-drawn arrow that read, "Park here for the best view." Sure enough, after a few turns, Clara came to a dead-end street where a few vehicles were scattered across a gravel parking lot. She slid into a spot between a red pickup and an old VW van, then stepped out into the cool morning sun. Before her stretched a small grassy park, framed by low hedges and a rusting metal sign that read, "Rockmere Breakwater Trail established 1893. Beyond that, it began an unbroken ribbon of massive granite blocks leading straight into the water, as if placed there by giants. Clara stood at the edge of the trail, the sea to both sides, and let herself take in the scale of it. From here, the lighthouse at the very end appeared miniature, a toy built at the edge of the world. Seagulls circled above like kites, calling out to each other in the open sky. But what caught Clara's attention next wasn't the lighthouse, it was the sound. Low, rhythmic, and layered. Not just the waves lapping against stone, but something beneath that. A subtle echo that vibrated faintly underfoot. She knelt down, placing a palm on the granite. It was warm from the sun, but there was a pulse, a deep hum, as if the breakwater itself were alive. She laughed quietly. "Sea's secret mouth," she whispered. "You old trickster." Before starting her walk, Clara made her way to a nearby viewing platform that overlooked the beach below. There, she spotted something unexpected, a man in a navy coat standing ankle-deep in water, staring at the breakwater's foundation. He didn't seem to be looking for shells or fishing, just watching, as though he were waiting for something to rise from the sea. Clara hesitated, then called out, "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" The man turned slowly, revealing a sharp, weathered face, and nodded. "Aye, if you like the ocean when she's quiet. But don't trust her silence. She's always hiding something." He turned back toward the water without another word. Clara made a mental note, mysterious local by the sea. Possibly former sailor or ghost whisperer. Ask Martha. She tightened the straps on her bag, pulled on a light cardigan, and began walking the breakwater path. The granite blocks were uneven, cracked in places by decades of salt and storm, yet each stone felt solid underfoot. As she walked, Clara was struck by the overwhelming sense of solitude. There were no guardrails, no barriers between her and the vast sea. Just wind, rock, and the slow, methodical rhythm of footsteps. The wind picked up. It wasn't aggressive, but it carried whispers. Clara paused and looked back toward the shore. The man in the navy coat was gone. She kept moving. Halfway down the path, she stopped to catch her breath and reached for her notebook. As she flipped through the pages, a photo fell out, a black and white image of her grandmother in her youth, standing on a dock in a long dress, laughing beside a tall man with a captain's hat. Clara had found the photo inside one of her grandmother's travel trunks. She had never learned the man's name. A sudden thought hit her: what if her grandmother had been to this very lighthouse? What if this journey wasn't just research, but some strange, poetic echo of a memory not her own? The wind responded by tooling her hair, lifting the corners of her notes as if urging her onward. She walked on. A short while later, Clara reached a small section where a single stone was darker than the rest, worn smoother, as if touched more often. As she stepped on it, she heard the faintest clang, like metal beneath rock. She knelt again and ran her hand over it. A groove. A symbol. No, a hatch. She leaned in closer. Just then, a voice startled her from behind. "You're not the first to feel it," said a woman, older, with silver curls and a camera slung around her neck. "Excuse me." Clara stood up quickly. "The stone," the woman said. "It hums. Locals say it marks the place where the old tunnel was sealed. During the war, they say." "A tunnel?" Clara asked, suddenly remembering little Junie's story. The woman shrugged. "Some say smugglers. Others say pirates. Or spirits. But I say it's just one of the sea's old tricks." She walked on without another word. Clara looked once more at the stone beneath her feet and whispered, "We'll see about that." The lighthouse, now just a few hundred feet away, stood firm and welcoming. It was small compared to others, but there was something proud about its stature, something defiant. She quickened her pace. Whatever this day held, whether mystery, memory, or merely magnificent views, Clara was ready to meet it all. As Clara approached the final stretch of the granite walkway, the lighthouse towered ahead like a guardian standing between worlds, land and sea, past and present. The wind had mellowed into a soft sea breeze, and the air was thick with the scent of brine and sun-warmed stone. The closer she got, the more she could make out its details: faded red shingles, a cast iron railing, and a single green door at the base. The tower wasn't tall or imposing, but it radiated an unmistakable charm. It stood at the very end of the breakwater, where land stopped and the great ocean began. As Clara stepped onto the final block of granite, she paused to take it all in. The water stretched endlessly around her on three sides, dotted with sailboats, gulls, and a distant fishing trawler. It was like standing at the edge of a forgotten world. She reached out and turned the handle of the green door. It opened. To her surprise, the lighthouse was unlocked. She stepped cautiously inside. The air was cool and dry, with the faint scent of salt, rust, and aged wood. A spiral staircase wrapped around the circular interior wall, leading upward to the lantern room. Clara climbed slowly, each step creaking under her boots. At the top, she emerged into a sun-filled room enclosed in thick glass. The great lamp that once guided ships through fog and storm still stood proudly in the center, although it hadn't been operational in decades. What caught her attention, however, was not the lamp, it was a journal lying open on the windowsill. She approached it carefully. The handwriting was neat, dated just a few months ago. The writer had signed their entries only with the initials A. B. April 14th. The humming stone is more intense than I remember. It resonates stronger during spring tides. I've marked the coordinates. If I'm right, there's a chamber beneath the second bend of the breakwater. I need to return with proper tools. April 28th. Found another entry in the archives in Augusta. Reference to a tunnel project halted during WWI due to unusual accidents. The contractor's name was Renford. Clara Renford. Connection. May 1st. Strange encounter. A girl claimed the sea talked to her when she stood on the seventh stone from the edge. Said it told her to listen, not look. Is this madness? Or something older than we know? Clara's pulse quickened. Her last name. The possibility of a family link to this lighthouse hadn't crossed her mind until now. Could her grandmother's mysterious sailor have worked here? Built it? Was it mere coincidence, or was she tracing a legacy written in stone? She turned another page, but it was blank. The rest of the journal had been torn out. Suddenly, a loud creak echoed through the tower below. Footsteps. Clara froze. She wasn't supposed to be here. Was someone else entering? The man from the shore. The silver-haired photographer. She quickly slipped the journal into her bag and crept down the stairs. But when she reached the base, the door was wide open and no one was there. Outside, the sea had grown a shade darker, clouds beginning to gather on the horizon. The wind picked up again, tugging gently at her coat. Clara stepped back onto the granite and looked down at the stone path she had come from. Suddenly, she remembered what the journal said, second bend of the breakwater. A chamber beneath. Seventh stone. She turned, counted backward. 1, 2, 3, On the seventh stone from the edge, Clara knelt. She placed both palms on the surface and closed her eyes. Just the sound of waves. Just wind. And then faintly beneath it all, a vibration. A slow, rhythmic thrum, like breath. She pressed her ear to the stone. There was something. Not a voice, not exactly, but a sound that mimicked one. Like words spoken underwater. Impossible to understand, yet filled with emotion. A call. A memory. A warning. She sat upright, breathless. Her heart pounded in her chest. Suddenly, the seagulls overhead scattered, crying out as if startled. A deep rumble rolled under her feet, not loud, not threatening, but enough to feel in her bones. Clara stood, shaky, uncertain whether she had just discovered something extraordinary or imagined it all. As she turned to head back along the breakwater, the clouds above shifted, and for just a moment, a beam of light broke through and landed squarely on the stone she had just touched. Marking it? Blessing it? Or perhaps warning her not to forget. Clara took one last glance back at the stone, the seventh from the edge, now glowing faintly under the spotlight of a passing cloud break. The breeze was cooler now, brushing her cheek with the salty fingers of the sea. She turned and began walking back toward shore, the crunch of her boots on the granite echoing louder than before, as if the sea had gone quiet to listen. Halfway down the breakwater, she slowed. Something felt altered. The path was the same, but the air had a different weight, like walking into an old cathedral. The scent had changed to less briny, more earthy. Almost like moss-covered stone. Suddenly, she saw it. A narrow, nearly invisible seam along one of the granite blocks. It looked like nothing more than a crack, but when she stepped closer and ran her fingers along the edge, she felt the unmistakable texture of metal beneath stone. Heart pounding, Clara reached into her bag and retrieved a small travel multi-tool mostly used for tightening camera mounts, but today, it might serve another purpose. She wedged the flat edge of the tool into the seam. Nothing moved. Then she remembered the journal's phrase, springtide, resonance. She knelt, placed her palm flat on the surface again, and whispered aloud, "Listen, not look." A gust of wind suddenly swept across the breakwater, rattling her coat. Then click. The seam shifted slightly, and with both hands, Clara pulled. A small section of the stone no more than 2 feet wide lifted upward with a deep grinding moan, revealing a narrow stairway descending into darkness. She stared at it, stunned. Below, damp air drifted upward. It carried the unmistakable scent of old stone, forgotten wood, and something else, salt and memory. Clara hesitated, then turned on the flashlight clipped to her bag and started down. The stairs were steep and uneven, clearly not meant for public use. The walls were lined with rough-cut granite and rusted metal brackets that once held torches or lanterns. After what felt like 20 steps, she entered a chamber. It was circular and small, perhaps once a supply room. Old crates were stacked in corners, rotted through in places. On the far wall, the remains of a painted map clung to the stone. The red paint had faded, but she could still make out the outline of the Rockmere coastline, and several marked tunnels leading under the water. One of them pointed to a spot labeled Chamber 3, Subsea Vault, Unfinished. Clara's breath caught in her throat. This place had history, and it had been intentionally buried. Suddenly, the beam of her flashlight flickered. She tapped it once, twice before it steadied. That's when she saw it. Scrawled on the wall beneath the map in charcoal, still bold despite the humidity, were the words. Some truths are better kept beneath the tide. A. B. Clara stepped closer. Beneath the writing, a small tin box sat atop a broken crate. She opened it, revealing a bundle of letters bound with a thin red ribbon and an old, yellowed photograph. It was her grandmother, standing next to a man in the same navy coat as the figure she saw earlier on the beach. On the back of the photo were the words, Eleanor and Arthur, Breakwater Beacon, August 1942. Clara sat down, stunned. Arthur. A. B. It wasn't a stranger's journal she had found. It had been written by Arthur Bell, the same Arthur from the photograph. The man in the coat. Somehow, still here. Was he alive? Or was his presence just another layer of mystery in a town that whispered through fog? The walls around her seemed to tighten. She needed answers. But the letters would have to wait. She quickly sealed the box and placed it in her bag, climbed the stairs, and emerged back onto the breakwater just as the wind picked up again. The hatch closed behind her on its own. Clara stood for a long moment, staring at the stone slab, now perfectly reset. There were truths buried under the sea, tunnels forgotten, names almost erased by time. And somehow, she had stepped into a story much older than her own. She began walking back toward the village, but this time, she wasn't just a writer documenting lighthouses. She was a key. And the locks were finally beginning to turn. Clara returned to the village with the box held tightly to her chest beneath her coat. The wind had picked up, no longer playful but purposeful, sweeping across the streets of Windermere Bay like a whisper passed down through generations. It was late afternoon now. The golden haze of morning had given way to a silver sky, and the clouds had begun to form in heavy, thoughtful clusters above the ocean. She parked her car in front of Martha's in the Willow House, a white clapboard building with blue shutters and a porch wrapped in wisteria vines. As she stepped inside, the scent of lemon balm and old pine greeted her like an old friend. Martha was seated at a table near the fireplace, a book resting in her lap, a teacup steaming beside her. She looked up as Clara entered, her eyes instantly narrowing with curiosity. "You found something," she said simply. Clara hesitated, then stepped forward and placed the tin box on the table. Martha didn't speak. She set the book aside and gently untied the ribbon. Her hands, though aged, were precise and graceful. She unfolded the top letter and schemed it. Her breath caught. "This is Arthur's handwriting," she whispered. "You knew him?" Clara asked, sitting down. Yes. I knew him when I was a child. Everyone in town knew him. He was the caretaker of the lighthouse in the 1940s. Said it wasn't just a job, it was his duty. Clara leaned in. "And my grandmother, Eleanor Renford?" Martha smiled, but it was tinged with sorrow. "She came to Windermere just before the war. Stayed for only a few weeks, but she left a mark on Arthur. They were inseparable for a time. But then she left suddenly. No one knew why. Arthur stayed. Never married. Never really spoke about her." Clara glanced at the photo again. They were standing at the Breakwater beacon. "Same place I found the journal." Martha nodded. "That lighthouse has kept more than ships safe. It's protected secrets, hidden things best left untouched. But maybe it's time they surfaced." Clara spent the rest of the evening poring through the letters. Each one painted a portrait of a man slowly unraveling the mystery beneath the lighthouse and within himself. Arthur wrote of strange sounds in the night, of lanterns flickering with no wind, and of dreams, vivid dreams where the lighthouse stood surrounded not by water, but by shadow. He spoke of an underground vault built during the early 1900s, intended as a wartime lookout post, but abandoned after a collapse sealed off half the tunnel system. No record of it remained in official documents. But the most haunting letter was dated November 1, 1943. "Dearest Eleanor, the lighthouse speaks now. Not in words, but in memory. It shows me things, people I've never met, lives I've never lived. It showed me you, walking its halls long after you've gone. They say time folds in on itself at sea, like sails drawn tight by wind. Maybe this place exists outside of it. Maybe we were meant to find each other again, not in life, but in echoes. If I disappear, no, it's not tragedy. It's reunion. Forever watching. Arthur." Clara put the letter down, her fingers trembling slightly. Was Arthur still alive when he wrote this? Did he vanish in pursuit of something below the breakwater? Or did he simply fade into legend, another name carried out to sea by time? The storm came in quietly overnight. Rain whispered against the windows, and thunder rumbled far off, like the groaning of the deep. The next morning, Clara returned to the breakwater. The sky was a steel gray, and the sea roiled with a gentle fury, waves slapping against the granite stones. But she wasn't alone this time. Junie stood near the trailhead, her hair tied back in a messy ponytail, holding a small silver compass. "My granddad says it used to point at the lighthouse," she said. "Even when you turned away." Clara crouched down beside her. And does it now? Junie held it flat in her palm. The needle spun, slowly, then stopped, pointing not toward the lighthouse, but toward the stone Clara had opened the day before. Junie looked up. It likes you. Clara blinked. Do you want to come with me? The girl grinned. Not today. But I'll wait here. Clara walked the length of the breakwater again, wind in her face, sea spray catching on her lashes. The hatch was gone, sealed again by time or tide, but her feet knew where to stand. She knelt, laid the compass from Junie beside her, and placed her palm on the stone. This time, no vibration came. No hum. Only silence. She closed her eyes. And then a whisper. Not in her ear, but inside her mind. A voice she didn't recognize, yet felt intimately familiar. It said one word only. Return. She opened her eyes and looked out toward the horizon, where the waves rolled endlessly and the clouds opened just enough to let a ray of sunlight pierce through. Something was waiting. Not just a vault or a tunnel, but a story. And she was not done writing it. Clara sat at the edge of the breakwater until the sky turned the color of old coins. The sea whispered softly around her, and the wind brought the scent of salt and something faintly floral like lavender carried from another season. The word continued to echo in her mind. Return. But return where? She hadn't even known the entrance to the hidden vault existed until yesterday. Now it was sealed again, as if the sea itself had swallowed it whole. She glanced down at Junie's silver compass, which still pointed stubbornly toward the granite slab. Back at the inn, Clara spread out the letters and map again. Something caught her eye for the first time, a faint grid overlay beneath the lighthouse map. One tiny square had the initial C3 marked in red. Chamber 3. She checked the coordinates jotted in Arthur's journal margin. 43. 1328 degrees north, 70. 2173 degrees west. She typed them into her phone. It wasn't the lighthouse itself, it was offshore, about 200 meters out into the bay. Underwater. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Her dreams were thick and tangled, waves crashing against tunnels, a man in a navy coat walking endlessly down stone corridors, and a young woman calling from beneath the sea, her voice trapped in water and time. When Clara woke at dawn, she knew what she had to do. By mid-morning, she had found a local diver, Liam Travers, a gruff but curious man who owned a small marine salvage business. His shop smelled like rust and seawater, and he had the look of someone who'd spent more years under the waves than above them. I'm looking for a sunken structure, Clara told him. Near the breakwater. Something old. Possibly sealed. Liam raised an eyebrow. You're not the first to come asking. Last one was, maybe 15 years ago. Woman in her 50s. said her father used to talk about tunnels under the lighthouse. She dove once. Never came back. Clara stiffened. Did you ever find her? Only her buoy. Found drifting 2 days later. He studied her a moment longer. But if you're determined, I can take you. The sea's calm today. But it won't be tomorrow. They set out just before noon on a weathered motorboat called the Second Light. The name made Clara smile. Liam handed her a wetsuit and gear. Stay within my line. If the water starts to pull you in a strange way, let go. Let it go. When they reached the coordinates, Liam dropped anchor. It's deeper than it looks, he said. 30 feet to the shelf. Then there's a ledge. After that, whatever's down there. Clara nodded and tightened her mask. They dove together. The water was surprisingly clear. Shafts of sunlight pierced the surface above them, lighting the seafloor in trembling columns of gold. Fish darted past their masks. Seaweed swayed like dancers. And then Clara saw it. A stone arch, half buried in silt and sea moss, just beneath a low granite ledge. The edges were carved artfully, intentionally, and faint symbols were etched into the stone. She brushed away the algae, revealing the initials. C. W. Her grandmother's name. She looked at Liam, who floated just above, signaling with wide eyes. Clara slipped through the arch. Inside was a cavern not vast, but far more intact than she expected. The walls were smooth, shaped by human hands. Rusted lanterns clung to hooks. On the far end of the chamber was a metal door, sealed tight and chained shut. And next to it a small glass box. Clara swam to it. Inside was a journal sealed in oilskin, and beneath it, another photo. Eleanor again, but this time, she was alone. Standing beside the arch. Written on the photo. The tide returns what the heart remembers. Clara stared. Her vision blurred not from salt, but from memory. From something ancestral, woven through time. Suddenly, a tremor passed through the chamber. Liam grabbed her shoulder, signaling, "Time's up." Reluctantly, she clutched the journal and swam back through the arch. As they surfaced, the water behind them churned, but didn't boil. It trembled, as if reluctant to release them. Back on the boat, Clara collapsed on the deck, soaked and breathless. "What did you find?" Liam asked. Clara looked out across the sea toward the lighthouse, now gleaming in the late sun. "I found proof that she was here. That she knew something I didn't." She opened the journal, careful with its fragile spine. Inside, in her grandmother's elegant cursive. "If you're reading this, Clara, then I been waiting for you. I always knew you would follow the pull of the tide because it lives in your blood. I came here to seal something. You have come to open it. But be careful, my dear, some doors don't lead back the same way you came. Clara sat in silence, heart pounding. She was not merely a writer. Not merely a descendant. Back in her room at the Willow House, Clara placed the newly recovered journal on the desk and dried its oilskin carefully. The scent of the ocean still lingered on its cover. The words inside, though faded, were untouched by time as if they had waited patiently for her arrival. Her grandmother's voice rose from the pages with every line. The chamber was never meant to be found again. But I knew someone would come. Someone with the same pull to light and solve that I had. You must understand, Clara, what lies behind that door is not just history. It's a memory, but not mine alone. The door must only be opened during the moon's third rising after spring's highest tide. If the symbols have not faded, and the echo still lingers, then the seal is waiting. But you must not enter alone. Clara sat back, chills running down her spine. Third moonrise after spring's highest tide. That would be tonight. She checked the lunar calendar. It was true. She had arrived in Windermere Bay by pure instinct or maybe something deeper. She grabbed her bag and ran to Martha. Martha was at her desk, tracing some local history documents. When Clara burst in, holding the journal, Martha didn't seem surprised. "You're going tonight, aren't you?" she asked gently. "I have to. But I need help." Martha sighed. "Then you'll need the ferryman." Clara blinked. "Who?" Martha stood, walked to the old grandfather clock in the corner, and opened its base. Inside was a long metal box navy blue with silver corners. She opened it, revealing a lantern. But not just any lantern, it had a silver casing etched with runes, a thick glass chimney, and a blue flame already flickering inside. "This has been passed down in Windermere for generations," Martha whispered. "Lit only by those seeking to cross into what we don't fully understand." Clara took it, reverently. "What do I owe it?" Martha smiled. "Just return." As the moon rose, high and cold in the sky, Clara and Liam stood on the boat, hovering near the underwater arch again. The water shimmered like oil in moonlight. "This isn't going to be a normal dive, is it?" Liam muttered. "No," Clara said. "Not anymore." She lit the lantern. The blue flame pulsed once, then steadied. The moment it glowed, the ocean responded. The water over the arch began to swirl, not violently, but with the precision of something awakened. The granite shimmered. The archway lit from within with a dull amber glow. Clara didn't hesitate. She dived. This time, the current pulled her forward, gently but irresistibly. As she passed through the arch, she expected the same chamber. But instead, she surfaced above water, in a chamber she had never seen before. It was vast, circular, with vaulted ceilings, and torches along the stone walls that lit spontaneously as she gasped for breath. The water ended in a small underground shore, and a stairway carved from stone led upward toward a massive double door. On it were the same initials: C, W, A, B, carved not beside each other, but interwoven. Clara stepped out of the pool and onto the dry stone floor. The lantern still burned in her hand, casting long shadows. She reached the door. No handle. Just a panel with 6 symbols: waves, a moon, a tree, a compass, an anchor, and a flame. She remembered her grandmother's words. The tide returns what the heart remembers. She placed the lantern on the flame symbol. It clicked. Then she pressed the compass, the moon, the anchor. Each one lit up with a quiet hum. As she pressed the final symbol, the tree, the doors groaned open. Beyond them was a circular room with a pedestal in the center. Floating above it, no wires, no tricks, was a glass sphere, inside which flickered a vision. Clara approached. The image inside the sphere began to move. Her grandmother and Arthur, standing together, much older than the photographs, holding hands inside this very chamber. Eleanor's voice filled the room. Clara, if you've come this far, it means the light still lives in our blood. This place isn't a tomb or a monument. It's a memory vault made by us, kept safe by the tides. We came here during the war, when the sea grew dangerous with more than just ships. We stored memories, protected them. Some were ours. Some, we couldn't explain. You'll have to choose now, whether to keep it sealed or pass it forward. The sphere dissolved, and the pedestal opened, revealing a thin book bound in silver leather. It had no title, just the initials, C, W. Clara took it in her hands. A memory passed through her, not her own. A cold winter night. A ship burning off the coast. A lighthouse whose light never failed. A promise between two souls that the sea would never take what love protected. Clara gasped. And then everything faded to black. She awoke on the deck of Liam's boat, drenched but breathing. He stood over her, wide-eyed. You were under for less than 5 minutes. But the sea glowed like lightning. Clara clutched the silver-bound book to her chest. I found what I didn't even know I was looking for, she whispered. Clara woke up in the small boat, her mind still floating as if she were gliding on the waves. The sun was high in the sky, the light filtering through the thin layer of clouds, making the water droplets cling to her hair sparkle. Liam stood beside her, his eyes fixed on her, his gaze filled with worry and curiosity. "She's awake," Liam said in a low voice, sighing as he took Clara's hand. "The sea today is unlike any I've ever known. Only a special person can survive such an experience." Clara felt a weight lifted from her heart, and she knew that this was not only a family legacy, but also a mission waiting for her to complete. Back in her room, Clara locked the door and opened the book. The first page contained a note written in a soft but firm handwriting, written by Eleanor. "If you have taken this book, it means you have taken the light and the darkness that I have kept all my life. It contains memories, untold stories of this lighthouse and this sea. But it also contains a curse of the deep sea, of secrets that were never meant to be revealed." Clara sighed. She could not refuse this responsibility. The next day, Clara decided to return to Martha and Liam to discuss the plan. When they met at the seaside cafe, a strange man entered, his eyes cold and his smile mysterious. He introduced himself as Elias Crow, a historian and occult researcher from Boston. Elias quickly reveals that he has been following the history of this lighthouse for many years and believes that beneath the lighthouse lies not only Clara's family secrets but also a treasure trove of ancient power. He offers to work with Clara to uncover those mysteries, but also warns her that there are other forces that are also seeking it, not for knowledge, but for power. Clara feels the fire burning within her. It is time for her to no longer be alone on this journey. But who are her true allies? Who are her hidden enemies? The group begins to prepare for a second expedition down to Chamber 3 and deeper into the underwater tunnel system. Clara rereads Arthur and Eleanor's diary, trying to decipher the codes and maps hidden in the book. Meanwhile, the nights at Windmere Bay become more eerie than ever, strange lights flashing across the water, distant echoes that sound like singing sea ghosts, and a feeling that someone is watching Clara's every move. With the moon rising, Clara's group decides to dive again. This time, they not only bring professional diving equipment, but also ancient protective objects prepared by Martha, amulets engraved with ancient letters and sea pearls, passed down from generation to generation to protect truth seekers. When they reach the treasure door, the stone door appears again with glowing symbols as if welcoming them. Clara gently placed her hand on the stone, and this time, mysterious images appeared in her mind, tales of lost sailors, devastating storms, and a curse sworn centuries ago. But as the door slowly opened, a huge wave crashed in, pushing the group away. Amid the rain and wind and the sound of the waves, Clara saw a figure on the shore. It was Elias, but his eyes were no longer friendly. "You don't know what you're touching, Clara," Elias said coldly, "and I won't let anyone else take it from me." The clash between light and darkness, between past and present, between unspoken secrets and the hidden power of the sea had only just begun. The tension in the air was palpable as Elias stepped forward, his sharp gaze locked on Clara and her companions. Liam's hand instinctively went to the dive knife strapped to his leg, while Martha's eyes gleamed with quiet determination despite her gentle demeanor. Clara took a steadying breath and addressed Elias. "Why have you come here, Elias? What do you truly want from this legacy?" A crooked smile spread across Elias's face as he paced slowly, shadows flickering across the stone walls. Legacy? No, my dear Clara. This is far beyond mere family heirlooms or history. It is power ancient and formidable. A force hidden beneath the waves, capable of reshaping worlds. And I won't let anyone stand in my way, not even you. A shiver ran down Clara's spine. Deep inside, she understood the danger this power represented if it fell into the wrong hands. But turning away now was not an option. The group knew time was running out. They had to explore and secure the secrets beneath the breakwater before Elias could seize control. That night, armed with advanced diving gear and carrying protective talismans, Martha had entrusted them enchanted pearls and inscribed charms. They set out once again toward the submerged entrance. Liam led the way through the labyrinth of cold, saltwater tunnels, navigating carefully past seaweed-draped pillars and coral-covered walls. Each breath Clara took was steady, but her heart pounded with anticipation and dread. Soon they arrived at a vast chamber. Intricately carved symbols adorned the walls, and an ancient map etched in stone revealed hidden passageways and a marked location labeled the vault. Clara's fingers traced a compass symbol next to the initials A. B. Arthur Bell's mark. This must be the resting place of the power Arthur and Eleanor sought to protect, she whispered. Martha's voice was grave. But it's also a trap. Many who ventured here before never returned. Suddenly, a disturbance echoed behind them. Elias appeared, flanked by several shadowy figures, their eyes cold and resolute. "Stop right there," Elias commanded. "This power isn't meant for the unworthy. Anyone who dares cross me will pay the price." Chaos erupted. Liam fended off attackers with his staff, while Martha unleashed a blinding light from her ancient talisman, disorienting their foes. Clara seized the moment to decipher the map further, leading them deeper into the tunnel system where the air grew thicker with mystery and the weight of forgotten memories. At the end of the passage, they discovered a massive stone door inscribed with cryptic runes. Upon pushing it open, they entered a circular chamber housing a pedestal where a glowing crystal orb floated, suspended without any visible support. Clara stepped forward, entranced by the orb's pulsating light. Inside, an ethereal vision unfolded, the image of Eleanor and Arthur, older and wiser, standing hand in hand within this very sanctuary. Eleanor's voice, soft yet commanding, filled the room. "Clara, if you've come this far, the light burns bright in your bloodline. This chamber holds memories and power, entrusted to our family by the sea itself. You must decide, will you guard these secrets, or release them to the world?" As the vision faded, the pedestal revealed a slender, silver-bound book etched only with the initial C. W. Clara reached for it, feeling a rush of ancient energy course through her veins, a connection not just to her ancestors, but to the very essence of the lighthouse and the sea. Suddenly, the chamber trembled as if reacting to the awakening force. Clara knew the journey was far from over. The choices ahead could change everything. The chamber still echoed with Eleanor's fading voice as Clara gently closed the silver-bound book. The glow from the crystal orb dimmed momentarily, casting flickering shadows across the vaulted stone walls. Her heart pounded with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Liam, standing nearby, broke the silence. What now? That orb. It's not just light or memory. It feels like power. Martha nodded gravely. Ancient energy. The kind that can heal or destroy. That's why our ancestors sealed it away. Clara ran her fingers over the orb's smooth surface. Suddenly, a surge of warmth spread through her hands, then radiated throughout her body. Images flooded her mind, roaring storms, ships battered by waves, whispered promises beneath the lighthouse lantern, and a figure cloaked in navy blue, standing resolute against the tide. She gasped, almost losing her balance. The orb pulsed faster, reacting to her presence. We need to understand it, Clara said, voice trembling. Before it controls us. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the chamber, snuffing out the torchlight. The orb blazed fiercely, illuminating the dark like a beacon. From the shadows emerged Elias, his eyes blazing with a newfound intensity. Enough, he declared. That power belongs to me now. Without warning, he lunged toward the pedestal. Clara stepped between him and the orb, gripping the silver-bound book tightly. Elias, she warned, this power is not yours to take. It's tied to my family, to this place, to the sea itself. Elias sneered, bloodlines don't grant ownership. Strength does. In a flash, he lunged again, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Liam and Martha scrambled to support Clara as the orb's light intensified, sending waves of energy rippling through the room. The walls trembled, water dripped from the ceiling as if the sea itself was watching. Clara felt an overwhelming urge to protect the orb, to preserve the legacy entrusted to her ancestors. Closing her eyes, she focused on the warmth from the orb. Suddenly, a vision flooded her senses, her grandmother Eleanor, guiding her, whispering secrets of the sea and its hidden power. Harnessing the energy, Clara extended her hand toward Elias, who stopped mid-attack, eyes wide with shock. A radiant barrier formed between them, shimmering with the hues of ocean and sky, forcing Elias to stagger back. Breathing heavily, Clara turned to Liam and Martha. We have to seal this power safely. If Elias can almost claim it, there are others out there waiting. Martha nodded. The rituals to contain it are in the old family records hidden deeper in the archives of Windmere Bay. Liam checked the entrance. We've got company. The tide is rising fast, and shadows move beyond the tunnels. Outside, the storm brewed, dark clouds rolling in with thunder in their wake. The sea churned violently as if reacting to the awakening power below. Clara knew their journey had only just begun. The battle for the lighthouse's secrets was far from over, and the choices they made next would ripple through time like the tides themselves. The storm howled fiercely outside, waves crashing relentlessly against the rocky shore as if the sea itself was enraged by the awakening of the ancient power. Clara, Liam, and Martha hurriedly fled the underwater chamber, the soft glow from Martha's enchanted lantern cutting through the driving rain like a lighthouse guiding them to safety. But they were far from alone. As they reached the dock, a group of strangers appeared from the shadows armed with weapons and high-tech gear, swiftly advancing toward the harbor. Liam's eyes narrowed with suspicion. They're not locals. They're here hunting for that power. Clara gripped the silver-bound book tightly, acutely aware that what they protected was more than just memories. It was a legacy intertwined with the lives of generations. Determined, they made their way to Windmere's ancient library, a sanctuary of rare manuscripts and dusty tomes chronicling the lighthouse's history and the surrounding seas. Inside the dimly lit reading room, the warm glow of golden lamps illuminated rows of oak shelves, creating an atmosphere thick with mystery and quiet reverence. Martha led Clara to a massive iron-bound cabinet locked tight. Inside lay ancient diaries and hefty volumes penned in archaic scripts. "Here lies a journal of immense importance," Martha whispered. "It belonged to the lighthouse's founder and reveals the origin of the power we seek to protect." Clara carefully turned the fragile pages. The handwritten entries spoke of an era when the lighthouse served not only as a beacon for ships but as a nexus between the human world and the mystical, where spirits and elemental forces were bound by a sacred crystal. Outside, Liam and Martha kept watch, their eyes scanning the foggy streets for the lurking strangers who blended with the night's shadows. A tense battle of wits began. Clara understood that to safeguard the power, they needed not only physical strength but a deep understanding of the past and legends to outmaneuver those who sought dominion. As night fell, Clara uncovered the method to use the crystal orb to reseal the surging energy. Yet to do so, she would have to return to the lighthouse itself, right in the heart of the fiercest storm Windmere Bay had seen in decades. Facing howling winds, roaring seas, and flashes of lightning, Clara embarked on a grueling journey that tested every fiber of her being. She could sense the presence of ancient spirits watching her, waiting for her to make her choice. At the lighthouse's door, she paused, took a deep breath, and steeled herself for the final step to seal away the power forever and determine not only her fate but that of the entire land. The storm raged around Clara like a living beast as she stood before the green door of the Windmere Breakwater lighthouse. Thunder rolled overhead, waves battered the granite path, and the wind whipped her soaked hair across her face. But inside, her heart was calm, resolute. She clutched the silver-bound book tightly in one hand, the enchanted lantern flickering blue in the other. The power she had uncovered, the legacy of her ancestors, was no longer just a secret locked beneath the sea. It was a choice. With steady hands, Clara inserted the lantern into a carved recess beside the door. The blue flame surged and the heavy oak door creaked open, revealing the familiar spiral staircase winding upward. Step by step, she ascended, feeling the weight of generations with every creak. At the lantern room, she placed the silver book on the pedestal beside the crystal orb. The orb glowed softly, a pulse syncing with her own heartbeat. Closing her eyes, Clara whispered a promise not only to the ancestors who had come before but to the future she hoped to protect. I will guard this light. I will carry your stories. But I will not let this power destroy what we hold dear. The orb flared brightly once, then softened, its glow settling into a steady beacon. Outside, the storm began to wane, the angry sea calming into gentle ripples. A single shaft of sunlight pierced through the clouds, illuminating the lighthouse like a divine spotlight. Clara stepped outside, the wind now cool and peaceful. She looked out over the bay, feeling a profound connection to her grandmother Eleanor, to Arthur Bell, to the countless souls who had kept this place safe. She understood now that the true power wasn't in the crystal or the vault beneath the waves, but in the legacy of stewardship, love, and sacrifice passed down through time. With a final glance back at the lighthouse, Clara smiled. Her journey was just beginning, but the light would never fade. Title: Whispers of the Breakwater, A Lighthouse Legacy. Description: In the quiet coastal town of Windermere Bay, travel writer Clara Renford uncovers a hidden legacy beneath the historic Breakwater Lighthouse, a secret vault containing ancient power and memories guarded by her ancestors. As storms gather and shadows close in, Clara must confront mysterious adversaries and embrace a destiny that transcends time. This gripping tale weaves mystery, family secrets, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness, revealing that true strength lies not in power itself, but in the courage to protect it. Join Clara's journey through fog, tides, and forgotten history in Whispers of the Breakwater.